A couple of months ago, I bought my first ever Tissot PRX, the Powermatic 80, the green dial, and it was my favourite watch until now. Welcome back to Time on the Wrist at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison as always, and today we have the new Tissot PRX with, technically it's a light green dial, but let's not lie here, it looks Tiffany blue. This Tissot that I have in my hand right now, the light greener Tiffany blue version, could potentially be my new favourite Tissot PRX. And let me give you a couple of reasons why it could be my new favourite. When I am looking at watches, I tend to look for the underdog in the industry. But at the same time, I don't like to be particularly flash, I would say. I kind of go for neutral colours or darkened colours. So, for example, I got the green version of the PRX. It is quite a dark green, and not actually in some lights it looks black. But occasionally there's a shoot, a spark from the industry that I can't ignore. And for me, this time, it was the Tiffany blue colour. But before we get straight into the colour of this new model, let's talk quickly about the specs of the model, because at the end of the day, that is why you're here. So this comes in at 40mm in diameter, which is exactly the same as the PRX that I actually own, the Powermatic 80 variant. So they have very, very similar sizes. There's only a couple of minor changes there, and I'll cover them in a second. And that's partially because this is a quartz version and the Powermatic 80 is an automatic version. Now, in my opinion, Tissot got the measurements of this watch absolutely bang on. I have slightly slimmer wrists, and also when you look at the trend in the watch industry, people are going for slimmer, smaller faces, slimmer, smaller watches. And actually, if you look at the trend overall in sports watches, they're getting that little bit smaller. Let's take the Longines Hydra Conquest as an example. They brought out 42mm variants, but now they come in 39mm variants. And I think the industry is sort of leaning one way at the moment. Things are getting that little bit smaller. The thickness of the Tissot PRX Powermatic 80, the variant that I actually have, it's actually in the safe at the moment, it comes in at 10.9mm in thickness. Now, when we compare that to the Quartz model, this comes in, according to our trusty digital calipers here, at 10.4mm in thickness. I would have expected a bigger difference in thickness between the Quartz and the automatic, just because the automatic has a movement and this is obviously battery powered. But that is quite nice that it's that little bit thinner. But I would also like it that little bit thinner. Having said that, I would also like it if it was in automatic with this colour in the Powermatic 80 variant. I don't know. Let's go into the lug-to-lug. The length of the PRX Quartz model comes in at 40mm, according to Tissot's website, and the Powermatic 80 variant, the one that I actually have sitting at home, comes in at 39.5mm, which is a little bit strange. I don't know why the Powermatic 80 variant has a shorter length than the Quartz model, because technically, in my mind, the Quartz model would be smaller. If any of you guys have the answer, then I'd be interested to know. Moving quickly on to the crown, the case, the bracelet, and all that lovely watch goodness. But before we do that, I want to know who has a Tissot PRX on today. And I want to know if it's a Quartz or an automatic. What is on your wrist today? It's time for the Chisholm Hunter tradition. Tradition. I never get that word right. What have you got on your wrist today? The case and the bracelet, of course, come in stainless steel, and this stainless steel is brushed, and I've said this in every single PRX review that I've done, and I've actually spoken about it in quite a lot of other reviews. The bracelet is 70s inspired genius. It is absolutely gorgeous. It jumps down a link each time that you kind of move the bracelet. Reflecting it in the light is just so satisfying to the eye. It tapers in really, really nicely, and it actually has a butterfly clasp at the end here. Now, for the price you're paying for this watch, I believe it's 295 quid. That is fabulous. The bezel on this watch is very, very limited and actually comes in polished stainless steel instead of the rest of the watch in general that comes in brushed. Now, this gives it a really nice contrast, and actually the face of the watch pops out that little bit more because of that shiny reflective metal being around the sort of face of this model. The negative that I can see with this is when polished metal scratches, it shows scratches a lot more than brushed does, because brushed is kind of more matte, whereas polished is obviously finely finished. It just shows scratches a little bit more. With that said, I've had my PRX for 2 months, true?
Yeah, just about.
Around about 2 months, and mine's been fine. This model is actually water resistant to 100 meters and has sapphire crystal glass on the dial. The difference between the sapphire crystal glass on this model, the Quartz model, and the automatic model is that the automatic model actually has anti-reflective coating on that sapphire crystal glass. So technically speaking, the Powermatic 80 version is better for the sapphire crystal, but remember what you're paying. There's literally £300 in difference between the Powermatic 80 and the Quartz version. Now it is time for the weight of this model, but before we get on to the weight, remember that if you want to feel and hold this model in person, Chisholm Hunter are actually authorised retailers for Tissot watches. Now you can have a look at these online. We've also got a pretty class try-on feature where you can actually take a photo of your wrist and it puts this watch on your wrist so you can see how it looks without actually coming into the store, or you can come into one of our 28 stores throughout the UK. The weight of this model with all the links intact, that is important to say, comes in at 132 grams, but according to Tissot's website it only comes in at 130 grams, so I'd actually give it 132 grams. But the interesting thing about this is the Powermatic 80 version, according to Tissot's website, comes in at 138 grams, but I have taken links out of it because I have a little bit, slimmer wrists, and as I'm sure most of you guys would, you'd take links out of it. So technically speaking, my watch at the moment would weigh less than the Quartz model. I'm just not sure how I feel about that. I don't think it's a negative. It's just kind of weird. The movement in this model is an ETA movement. It is a Quartz movement, it is battery powered. But remember, because you're getting a battery powered watch, it is £300 cheaper than getting the automatic version. So there is a big price difference there, but for the money, you're getting all the bells and whistles, plus a colour that is bespoke to the Quartz models at the moment for Tissot. Now, we'll talk about the colour in a second. And now we get to the creme de la creme. Now we get to the pinnacle of this Tissot PRX. The reason why this is such an incredible seller, and the reason why it's possibly my new favourite PRX. The dial on this watch is light green, Tiffany blue, and the hands and the index play wonderfully to that, the indices, because they are in a silver colour which is so clean against that light dial. Now yes, there is the argument that the readability is slightly compromised with this colour match, but to me, I don't really care. I'm getting it for the style and it looks bloody cool. Another thing you might notice about the colour of this model, the light green colour or the Tiffany blue colour, is it actually has a texture running down it. Now this texture actually looks a bit like brushed metal. It kind of has those really soft lines just going straight down it. And you can only see this when you reflect it in the light a certain way. When I reflect it straight into the light, it looks like a flat colour. Whereas when I turn it to the side, you can see that depth running through it. And for 295 quid, that's a good feature. The PRX logo is positioned comfortably at 6 o'clock and the date window is at 3 o'clock. Now, although I like these two features and you're getting a date window for 295 quid, I would like the date window to be at the 6 o'clock mark. I think there's a really nice piece of space for it just below the PRX symbol. And also, on a side note, I really like the PRX logo. It's very 70s inspired, it's very angular, it's very kind of trendy. This model actually does still have lume on the hands and the indices, and it's pretty subtle. It is kind of a weaker lume than other models, but remember this is only £295. And with this epic colour and epic depth to the dial, they probably didn't even have to put a lume on it anyway, but they did, and that's pretty cool. So let's circle back to the start of this video, to the bit where we were talking about this incredible colour and why it could potentially be my new favourite watch, if there was a change. But let's talk about the colour first. So it comes in light green, as Tissot call it, which we would brand as Tiffany blue, which the watch community would brand as Tiffany blue. Here's the genius behind Tiffany's marketing there. They have taken over a certain colourway, and whenever any brand uses something similar, it's automatically branded by the community as Tiffany. So let's look at the Rolex Oyster Perpetual, the one that came in a kind of light blue colour. We automatically called that a Tiffany dial. There's also an Omega Moon Swatch which we called a Tiffany blue, even though it technically wasn't, because if Swatch Group were to use the Tiffany blue colour, they'd probably get sued. On the same wavelength, Tiffany as a brand is world renowned, and it's world renowned for a couple of different things. One is very, 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 very expensive diamonds and jewelry. Not quite as good as Chisholm Hunters, but you know, we'll get there. The next thing is being collaborated with celebrities. Jay-Z, Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Wahlberg all wear the Tiffany Patek Philippe. Next up, you've got the Tiffany Patek Philippe. I think the Tiffany Blue Patek sold for 3.7 million at auction. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the figure. I believe that Tiffany Blue, because it's so world-renowned, is a sign of status. But here's the thing, not everyone has the money, including myself, to go for a Patek Philippe Tiffany dial. They want quality for an affordable price. And that's where this comes in. That's where the genius of Tissot comes in. At the start of this video, I said this was my favorite model, and technically I was telling the truth. It is partially my favorite model, but I would love there to be an automatic version of this. And so much so, in fact, I'm going to do something here that I'm probably going to regret. I'm going to make a deal with you. If you could subscribe to this channel right now, I will buy the Powermatic 80 version of this watch with that dial if it comes out. If it comes out in a Tiffany blue or a light green, I'll buy it. I'll buy it. That's how confident I am. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, my incredible watch community. I truly believe that this is the best watch community on YouTube, so I need to genuinely extend a thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up. If you learned something new, please hit that subscribe button. If you want to see what we get up to behind the scenes, fire over to my personal Instagram, Chisholm Hunter Watches, where I post mostly about watches, and give us a follow. And I'll see you next week.